A legendary pirate captain, a cursed treasure, and a haunted island bound by ancient secrets. Captain Zara Reyes leads her fearless crew to Serpent's Isle in search of riches and redemption. But as ghostly serpents rise from the shadows, and a spectral king demands a sacrifice, Zara uncovers a shocking connection between the curse and her own bloodline. Faced with betrayal, supernatural power, and impossible choices, she must risk everything to save her crew and challenge her fate. Will she escape the Serpent King's grip, or will the curse claim her soul forever? The horizon loomed like a dark omen as Captain Zara Reyes, known across the seven seas as Ironheart, held her spyglass steady. Her gaze locked onto Serpent's Isle, a jagged shadow on the dawn's edge. The air crackled with unease. The island was a place of myths and mystery, feared for a curse that turned the bravest pirates into whispers on the wind. Around her, the crew of the Black Serpent shifted uneasily, glancing between Zara and the mist-enshrouded island. They all knew the tales. Any soul who dared step foot on Serpent's Isle faced the wrath of the Serpent King, a ghostly pirate lord who had sold his soul to the Sea Witch herself, binding his spirit to guard an immense treasure. But Zara had no choice. She had stumbled upon a map, its faded ink scrawled in the blood-red sigil of her own family, a link that demanded she find the truth. A rumble from the ship's hull broke the silence, and Jax, her scarred and weather-beaten first mate, stepped beside her, brow furrowed. "You're sure about this, Captain?" he muttered, voice low, as if speaking too loudly would wake the sleeping curse. Zara's jaw tightened. "This isn't just treasure, Jax, it's a legacy. My blood is tied to that island, and I'll be cursed if I leave that mystery buried." Her hand slipped to the hilt of her cutlass, its cold metal grounding her in the face of what lay ahead. She raised her voice to the crew, "All hands on deck. Today we face more than just stormy seas. This isle holds secrets, ones that may very well keep us here forever. But if you're bold enough to follow, riches beyond your wildest dreams await." Murmurs rippled through the crew. Greed and fear flickered in their eyes, but one by one they tightened their belts, gripped their weapons, and steeled themselves. A lifetime on the seas had prepared them for battles and storms, yet nothing could brace them for the cursed secrets lying in wait. "Before we set sail, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? And if you were part of this crew, what role would you take on? The navigator, the lookout? Let's see who's brave enough to join this adventure." As they neared Serpent's Isle, Zara felt an unnatural stillness descend. The air hung heavy, tinged with the scent of salt and something darker, like burnt offerings. Her gut told her to turn back, but the map's cryptic words echoed in her mind. Blood binds this fate. She was tethered to whatever curse awaited. The ship anchored in a narrow cove, its shadow merging with the towering cliffs. The crew descended into rowboats, their oars slicing through the still waters. Jack scanned the shoreline, squinting at the jungle that seemed to breathe, moving with an unseen rhythm. He muttered under his breath, "This island's alive, I swear it." But Zara pressed on, leading her crew into the dense foliage. Vines tangled like writhing serpents around ancient statues, faces carved in twisted expressions of agony. The jungle swallowed all sound but the crunch of their footsteps, as though the very trees were listening. Just then, one of the crew stumbled upon a skeleton, half buried in moss, its bony fingers clutching a tarnished coin. The crew member shivered and pulled back, eyes wide with fear. Zara glanced down, eyes hardening. This was the price paid by those who dared seek the Serpent King's treasure. They trekked deeper into the island, tension thickening with every step. When they reached a cliff's edge, Zara paused, glancing down into a mist-filled chasm. Far below, hidden by the mist's embrace, lay the outline of a crumbling stone structure, the crypt of the Serpent King. It pulsed with an eerie green light, faint but unmistakable. "Captain," Jax whispered, his voice cracking. This is madness. The curse—" "Enough!" Zara snapped, her eyes blazing. "I didn't drag you here for half-tales and cowardice. We find that crypt, we take what's ours, and we leave this cursed rock behind." But doubt gnawed at her as they continued. She could feel the island's pull as though it recognized her blood and sought to drag her deeper into its secrets. They descended, the mist swirling around them like ghostly hands. Finally, they reached the ancient door to the crypt, towering and engraved with monstrous serpents and symbols none could decipher. Zara's heart pounded as she raised her hand, pressing it against the cold stone. Suddenly, a piercing cry echoed from the shadows. One of her crew had disappeared. The rest staggered back, eyes wide, the chill of fear cutting through their resolve. Zara clenched her teeth. She could feel the pull of the curse, whispering warnings she could no longer ignore. She turned to her crew, her voice unwavering despite the fear clawing at her gut. "This is the crypt of the Serpent King. Remember, no gold is worth our lives, but our lives are worth every ounce of bravery you have." She raised her blade. "Onward. We face whatever curse this island holds, together." As they stepped into the crypt, the ground trembled. The green glow intensified, casting twisted shadows along the stone walls. Zara led the way, though every instinct screamed that they were walking straight into a trap. A voice, deep and filled with malice, seemed to whisper from the walls. "Who dares disturb my rest?" The crew halted, eyes darting around. Zara gritted her teeth. "Captain Zara Reyes of the Black Serpent." The voice chuckled, a sound like gravel scraping over bone. "Welcome, blood of Reyes. You come for my treasure, but what will you give in return?" In the torchlight, Zara saw the faint outline of a shadow, an ancient figure draped in tattered rags, a ghostly crown upon his brow. It was the Serpent King, his hollow eyes burning with green fire, waiting for them to dare to challenge his curse. The crew of the Black Serpent stood frozen at the crypt's threshold, eyes locked on the ghostly figure of the Serpent King looming in the shadows. His hollow gaze swept over them, seeing into their very souls, as if searching for weakness to exploit. Captain Zara Reyes clenched her jaw, steadying her grip on her cutlass. She could feel the curse settling like a shroud around them, the air thick and cold as the sea witch's breath. "Onward, if ye dare," the Serpent King's voice echoed, guttural and ancient. The shadows cast by the green glow of his spectral eyes slithered across the stone walls, taking twisted shapes that seemed to watch and whisper, waiting for Zara's next move. Zara held her crew's gaze, steel and fire in her eyes. "We came for treasure," she said, her voice steady, "and we'll claim it. No curse will hold us back." She glanced at Jax, whose usually fierce expression was painted with a flicker of doubt. She didn't have time for hesitation, not now. If they were to survive, they'd need every ounce of courage they could muster. "Stay close," she ordered, and led her crew deeper into the crypt. They descended through winding passageways lined with decaying skeletons and rusted armor from battles long forgotten. The walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own, shifting and closing in, driving them toward the heart of the curse. Strange markings lined the stone, twisted symbols that none could read but all could feel, a language of fear, ancient and binding. Jax whispered, his voice barely carrying over the haunting silence. "Captain, it feels like we're walking into a grave." Zara shot him a hard look. "Every treasure's buried somewhere, Jax. We're not turning back." But as they ventured deeper, Zara herself felt the island's unnatural pull, a force beyond mortal understanding, tightening around her like a noose. Just then, a faint light appeared ahead, a flickering green glow, identical to the fire in the Serpent King's eyes. The crew hesitated, glancing warily at one another. Zara raised her hand, signaling them to press on. As they rounded the corner, they found themselves in a vast underground chamber, the walls decorated with carved serpents and depictions of sea monsters dragging ships to their doom. And there at the center stood the Serpent King's treasure, piles of gold and jewels that sparkled with an unnatural gleam, as if daring them to take it. As the crew's eyes widened, Zara could see their greed begin to override their fear. One of her younger men, Diego, broke formation and sprinted toward the pile, his face lit with the promise of riches. "It's ours, all ours." "No!" Zara shouted, but it was too late. The moment Diego's hands touched the treasure, a scream tore through the air, piercing and unnatural. Diego's skin turned pale, his eyes wide with terror as ghostly serpents slithered from the gold, coiling around his arms and neck, pulling him down. His scream faded into silence as his body was absorbed into the ground, leaving nothing but the faint glimmer of a gold coin where he'd stood. The rest of the crew staggered back, horror etched across their faces. Zara forced herself to stay calm, though her heart pounded with dread. "This treasure isn't just cursed," she said through gritted teeth. It's protected by the Serpent King himself. The ghostly figure appeared once more, his laughter low and mocking. "You come seeking wealth but offer nothing in return," he sneered. "What value has gold if it costs your lives? Then what would you have from us?" Zara demanded, her voice unyielding. The Serpent King grinned, revealing empty sockets where his eyes should have been, yet still glowing with a ghastly green fire. "A life freely given," he said, his words echoing in the chamber. "Or, you may leave and abandon the treasure to me." Zara's crew erupted in panic. The price was too high and fear had its claws deep in their hearts. "We should leave, Captain," one of them stammered, voice quivering. "Nothing is worth this." But Zara was resolute. She knew there was more at stake than gold alone. The map had been left for her, a family legacy calling her to this cursed place. Her blood, her past, and her destiny were bound to the Serpent King's treasure. "Let's keep moving," she commanded, voice cold as steel. "We're not leaving empty-handed." They moved deeper into the chamber, the treasure beckoning like a siren's song, glittering temptingly under the ghostly glow. Tension simmered among the crew, fear mingling with greed, and Zara knew it wouldn't be long before cracks began to show. The sound of dripping water echoed, mingling with the soft whispers of the crypt, as if the island itself was taunting them. Jax leaned close to Zara as they pressed forward, his voice low. "Captain, we've already lost one. This is madness. Whatever's binding you to this place, it's not worth our lives." Zara clenched her fists, suppressing a tremor of doubt. "My family is tied to this treasure, Jax. There's a mystery here, something that connects me to the Serpent King. I won't abandon it." Jax studied her for a long moment before nodding, though the lines of worry on his face deepened. He'd seen her stubbornness before, but this time, something darker seemed to fuel her resolve. As they ventured further, Zara noticed strange symbols etched on the walls, images that felt disturbingly familiar. She traced one with her fingers, a serpent swallowing its tail, a symbol of endless cycles. It sparked something deep within her memory, a story told to her as a child, of a pirate who had sacrificed everything for immortality. Her heartbeat quickened as she began to piece together fragments of a tale she had half forgotten. The Serpent King wasn't just a ghost guarding treasure, he was a warning. But before she could unravel the truth, a sudden shout broke her thoughts. Another crew member, Maddox, lunged forward, eyes glazed with a strange hunger, reaching for the gold. Zara's command to stop him was too late. His fingers grazed the shimmering pile, and he let out a strangled cry. Serpentine shadows coiled around him, just as they had Diego, dragging him down until only silence remained. Zara's face hardened. "No one touches the treasure. Not until we understand this curse." The ghostly figure of the Serpent King materialized again, his laughter filling the air. "Greed is a powerful poison," he intoned, circling them like a vulture. "Few can resist it, and those who do still must pay a price." Zara's resolve steeled even further. "Enough of these games. What do you want from us?" The Serpent King's eyes gleamed with malice. "You must complete the sacrifice. One life given freely will break the curse and bind the treasure to you." Her crew exchanged uneasy glances, fear etched in their faces. Zara's voice cut through the silence. "We are bound to this fate, but I will be the one to decide how we pay it." The crew gathered closer, the crypt walls seeming to close in as if the shadows themselves were preparing to claim them. Zara could feel the Serpent King's gaze on her, expectant, eager for the sacrifice he'd demanded. The crew's desperation grew, and Zara could sense their unity beginning to fray. The ghostly shadows that haunted the crypt grew bolder, shifting in the darkness, whispering promises of escape, of safety, if only they abandoned the captain. Jax looked at Zara, a mixture of loyalty and fear flickering in his eyes. "Captain, there's no guarantee you'll survive this. And if you don't," Zara's gaze was steady. "I know what's at stake, Jax, but this is my legacy to face no matter the cost." As they ventured further, they came upon an altar, carved with symbols that sent shivers down her spine. Here, Zara knew, lay the place of the Serpent King's curse. She could feel the weight of her family's history, a bloodline bound to this treasure by fate or curse. And in that moment, Zara made a decision. "Ready your blades," she commanded. "We're going to finish what my family started." The crew hesitated, but as Zara stepped forward, sword drawn, a fiery resolve filled her. She would confront the curse, face the shadows, and claim the legacy that had haunted her bloodline. The treasure would be theirs, but the price was yet to be paid. The air in the crypt thickened as Captain Zara Reyes stood before the ancient altar, her blade glinting in the eerie green light that pulsed from the cursed treasure. Shadows twisted and writhed along the walls, and every corner seemed to murmur secrets she could almost, but not quite, understand. Her crew gathered close behind her, their faces pale with fear but tempered with a hint of greedy resolve. The Serpent King's ghostly figure hovered near the altar, his empty eye sockets fixed on Zara, as if gauging her worth. His voice, like rusted iron scraping over bone, filled the chamber. "You stand on the edge of fate, blood of Reyes. Take one step forward and the curse binds you for all eternity. Step back, and you will leave with nothing but empty hands and haunted dreams." But Zara was unmoved. This cursed fortune, this shadowy legend, had been calling her family for generations. She knew this wasn't merely about gold or jewels. Something deeper, darker, was woven into her bloodline, and the answers lay in facing the curse head-on. She raised her chin defiantly, her voice clear and unwavering. "I didn't come this far to turn back. The treasure is ours, but I'll be the one to pay the price." Behind her, the crew murmured, unsettled. Jax, her first mate, stepped forward, worry creasing his brow. "Captain, there's no need for you to shoulder this alone. We're all in this together. Let one of us stand in your place." But Zara's expression was resolute, her eyes flashing with the fierce determination that had earned her the title Ironheart. "No, Jax. This is my fight, my family's debt. You all came here for treasure, but this is a curse that belongs to me." Her voice lowered, almost a whisper. "If I don't face it now, it'll haunt me until the sea itself swallows me whole." Without another word, she stepped toward the altar, meeting the Serpent King's hollow gaze. He grinned, the ghostly fire in his eyes flickering as if in approval. "Then so be it, Captain Reyes. To claim the treasure, you must make the ultimate sacrifice." His skeletal hand gestured to a knife resting upon the altar, its blade shimmering with an unnatural ghostly light. Zara reached for the knife, her hand steady, her mind focused. But just as her fingers closed around the hilt, a sudden shout broke the silence. "Wait!" It was Jax. He strode forward, his eyes blazing with an intensity she had rarely seen. "If it's a sacrifice that's needed, I'll stand with you. You're not going down alone, Captain." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crew, and one by one they stepped forward, offering themselves, defying the Serpent King's curse. The Serpent King's laughter filled the chamber, echoing off the walls. "Fools, all of you. Greed binds your hearts, and no matter your bravery, only one can bear the weight of the curse." His gaze returned to Zara. "Decide, Captain. Who will pay the price?" Zara looked at her crew, the men and women who had followed her through storm and battle, who had risked their lives for her mad quest. In their eyes, she saw loyalty, but she also saw the fear that gripped them. She knew that if anyone were to leave with the treasure, it had to be them. She couldn't take them all down with her. "Stand back," she commanded, her voice a final order. "This is my fate." And with that, she lifted the knife and brought it down onto the altar, her own blood marking the stone as it absorbed the sacrificial offering. The chamber rumbled, a cold wind tearing through the crypt as the curse's power seemed to awaken, a dark force that writhed and twisted like a storm in the depths of the sea. Suddenly, the Serpent King's spirit surged forward, merging with Zara's, a searing pain shooting through her as the curse latched onto her very soul. She gritted her teeth, refusing to scream, but the agony was like fire burning through her veins. Her vision blurred as shadowy images filled her mind, the memories of the Serpent King, his pact with the Sea Witch, the moments leading to his death, and the curse he bound to the treasure to keep it out of mortal hands forever. But then, just as quickly as it began, the pain ebbed, leaving her standing alone, breath ragged, body trembling. The Serpent King's ghost had disappeared, his spirit now part of her, his curse bound to her flesh and blood. The room was silent, save for the rattling breaths of her crew as they watched her, waiting, eyes wide with fear and hope. Zara forced herself to stand tall, though the weight of the curse seemed to press down on her like a physical burden. She looked down at her hands where a faint dark mark had appeared, a twisting serpent that seemed to move beneath her skin, as though alive. "It's done," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The curse, it's bound to me now." The crew took hesitant steps back, fear and respect mingling in their expressions. Jack spoke first, his voice a mixture of awe and sadness. You took it upon yourself, Captain. You saved us all." Zara forced a grim smile. "The treasure is yours now. Take what you can carry. But remember, I can't leave this place. The curse won't allow it." A heavy silence settled over them. The weight of Zara's sacrifice hung thick in the air. Each crew member cast her one last look of respect and sorrow before moving to gather the glittering gold and jewels, stuffing their satchels and pockets with as much as they could carry. But there was no joy in it, only the somber understanding that their captain had sacrificed everything for them. As the last of her crew left the crypt, Zara watched them go, feeling a hollow ache in her chest. She was alone now, alone with the curse and the silence. The treasure lay at her feet, untouched, and she realized with bitter irony that she too was now its guardian, just as the Serpent King had been before her. She paced through the crypt, feeling the pull of the curse, the shadows whispering to her, binding her closer to the island. Her body, once strong and full of life, felt heavier, as if the shadows had replaced her very bones with cold stone. She glanced at the faint serpent tattoo slithering across her skin, knowing it was the mark of the curse, a symbol that she was no longer truly alive but bound to Serpent's Isle, trapped between life and death. A deep guttural laugh echoed through the crypt, chilling her to the core. The Serpent King's voice, still faintly lingering in her mind, taunted her. "You are mine now, Captain Reyes, guardian of the treasure, my successor." But Zara clenched her fists, defiant even in the face of her doom. "I may be bound here, but I am still Zara Reyes, and I swear one day I'll break this curse, even if it takes me an eternity." Outside, her crew had returned to the Black Serpent, their pockets laden with gold and their hearts weighed down by sorrow. As they set sail, they cast one last look at Serpent's Isle, the ghostly glow of the cursed treasure faintly visible from the shore. They would tell her story, carry her legend across the seas, and honor the captain who had saved them by bearing the burden of the curse. Far out to sea, on nights when the mist was thick and the waves were still, sailors would claim they could see a lone figure on Serpent's Isle, a woman standing at the edge of the cliff, her eyes glowing with the eerie green light of the curse. Some say it's the spirit of Captain Zara Reyes, guarding the treasure she had claimed with her own soul. Others say she's waiting, biding her time, searching for a way to break free. But all who heard the tale knew one thing for certain. Serpent's Isle was cursed, and its guardian was a woman who had defied the curse itself, a captain who refused to surrender, even in death. And so, Captain Zara Reyes, bound to the island, became more than legend, a warning to all who sought cursed fortune and a reminder that some treasures are worth more than a life, but demand far more than gold to possess. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to subscribe to You Pirate for more adventures like this. Share with a friend who would brave a cursed island, or maybe would think twice about it, and stay tuned for the next high seas mystery that awaits. As the mist settled over the cursed shores of Serpent's Isle, Captain Zara Reyes stood alone on the rocky cliff, the taste of salt and shadow thick on her lips. She watched as the Black Serpent, her ship, her legacy, her crew, slipped further into the distant horizon, its sails catching the final rays of the setting sun. The haunting green glow of the curse pulsed in her veins, filling her with a strange, restless energy. She was bound to the island now, tied to its secrets and the Serpent King's treasure for all eternity. For a long time, Zara stayed there, alone, her eyes fixed on the empty expanse of the sea, her heart heavy with the sacrifice she had made. She felt the weight of the curse settle deeper into her bones, the dark serpent tattoo that slithered along her arm, whispering reminders of the pact she'd entered into. She was no longer merely Zara Reyes. She was now the new guardian of the Serpent King's legacy, the keeper of the cursed treasure. But deep inside, a spark of defiance remained. She was still Ironheart, still the woman who had dared to face a legendary curse, and she was not about to surrender to it. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months as Zara explored her new prison, the island that was both her tomb and her kingdom. She discovered every cavern, every twisted route, every ancient carving that held pieces of the Serpent King's story. The island revealed its secrets slowly, grudgingly, as though testing her endurance. Zara was relentless, determined to find a way to understand the curse, and perhaps one day to break it. One evening, as the moon rose high and cast its silver glow over the jagged cliffs, Zara stumbled upon a hidden alcove, concealed by vines and twisted branches. Inside, she found a series of carvings, etched with ancient symbols she could barely decipher. They depicted the tale of the Serpent King, a man who, like her, had sought to master the island's power, to bind its ancient magic to his will. But the final carving held something unexpected, a figure, neither the Serpent King nor a victim of his curse, but a woman with a serpent tattooed on her arm, facing the sea with defiance. Zara's heart pounded as she recognized the mark on her own skin. This was a prophecy, a legend of a woman bound to the curse who would one day rise against it. A new hope ignited in her chest. She wasn't here simply to guard the treasure. She was here to challenge the curse itself. Seasons passed, and Zara learned to harness the strange powers of the curse. Shadows bent to her will. The whispers in the crypt grew silent, and the spirits that had once tormented her became wary. The island, which had once felt like a prison, began to feel like something she could control. Yet for all her newfound power, she was still tethered, bound by the curse to remain on the island. Then, one night, as a fierce storm lashed the shores, a ship appeared on the horizon, struggling against the towering waves. It was no ordinary ship. It bore the mark of a pirate lord Zara had known well, one who had been her rival in life, Captain Elias Crow. The storm had forced him into the island's treacherous waters, and Zara knew what awaited him if he set foot on the cursed sands. A strange urge gripped her. She didn't need to protect Elias or his crew, but she could sense that his fate, entwined with the curse, might offer her an answer. Gathering her strength, Zara summoned the island's shadows to guide her. She watched as the ship floundered, the crew shouting and scrambling, unaware of the trap they were sailing into. Elias's ship, the Vulture's Wing, crashed against the shore, its hull splintering as the crew spilled onto the beach, exhausted but alive. They hadn't yet felt the pull of the curse, the weight that would soon trap them if they ventured further inland. Zara stood in the shadows, watching, waiting. She needed them to reach her, to see if they could break the boundary she herself could not cross. Elias, ever the daring captain, led his men forward, his eyes catching the faint glimmer of gold in the darkness. The Serpent King's curse was already working on them, filling their minds with visions of treasure and glory. Zara stepped forward, her form shrouded in the shadows she now commanded, her voice carrying a warning she knew few would heed. "Turn back," she called, her voice echoing through the trees. "This island is cursed, bound to the sea. None who tread here shall leave." Elias's gaze met hers, surprise flickering across his face. "Zara, impossible. They said you were lost." "I am not the Zara you knew, Elias," she replied, her voice colder, haunted. "I am bound to this isle, cursed to guard the treasure you seek. But if you have courage enough, there may yet be a way to end it." Elias narrowed his eyes, sensing the danger, but his greed and ambition overpowered his caution. He motioned his men forward, ignoring her warning, and led them deeper into the island. Zara followed silently, watching as they fell victim one by one to the traps that lay hidden, the island's curse claiming each of them until only Elias remained, facing her with a mixture of anger and terror. "This is your fate, Zara," he spat. "To haunt this island, to lure men to their doom?" "No, Elias," she replied, her voice steady. "My fate is to break the curse, and perhaps yours can help me do it." A glint of understanding flickered in his eyes, and for the first time, he looked at her not as a rival, but as something far more dangerous. Together, they faced the altar, where the Serpent King's curse pulsed like a heartbeat, waiting. Elias held the knife she had once wielded, his hand shaking slightly as he realized what was being asked of him. "If we're to break this curse," Zara murmured, "you must make a choice, a true sacrifice. The island demands it." Elias's eyes met hers, defiant yet resigned, and with a nod he plunged the knife into the altar. The ground shook, and a roar of fury filled the crypt as the spirit of the Serpent King fought against the force of the sacrifice. But Elias's life freely given broke the ancient binding. Zara felt the curse lift from her like a weight peeling away, her skin warming, the serpent tattoo fading as if burned away by fire. She gasped, the air clear and fresh, free of the taint of the Serpent King. The treasure shimmered one last time before crumbling into dust. Its power broken, the island released from its dark grasp. At dawn, Zara walked to the beach where her freedom lay waiting. The Black Serpent had returned, her crew somehow knowing that the captain they had once lost was now free to lead them once more. Jax greeted her at the shore, his face breaking into a smile of disbelief and joy. "Captain, you did it. You broke the curse." She nodded, her heart swelling with the knowledge that she had defied the Serpent King, outlasted the curse, and returned to her crew. Together, they boarded the Black Serpent, Zara taking her place at the helm, feeling the familiar pull of the sea beneath her feet. As they sailed away, Serpent's Isle faded into the horizon, its curse finally broken, its treasure lost to legend. But Zara Reyes, the Ironheart, remained. She had paid the price and in doing so, had earned the freedom of the sea once more, her legend forever bound to the haunting whispers of Serpent's Isle. "Set sail, lads," she called, her voice ringing clear across the deck. "Our next adventure awaits." If you've made it this far, brave souls, don't forget to subscribe to You Pirate for more tales of daring, danger, and mystery on the high seas. Share this adventure with a friend who would have followed Zara to the Cursed Isle and beyond.